Hi there and welcome to the latest episode of The People of Private Capital. I'm Ferdinand Roberts, CEO and founder of Asset Class. We're providers of solutions to the private equity sector, the venture capital sector, the commercial real estate sector, and the broader private capital markets. So whether you're looking at fundraising, managing investor relations, or an LP portal for your investors, we can help. So come talk to us. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Pat Kinsel, who is the CEO and founder of Proof.com, formerly Notarize.com. And in this episode, we'll be talking through Pat's entrepreneurial journey, time spent at Microsoft, a couple of startups, some more successful than others, and then ultimately what led to the foundation of Notarize.com and then ultimately Proof.com. It's a really great conversation. I hope you enjoy it. And with that, let's dive in and talk to Pat from Proof.com. Well, welcome, Pat. Obviously, a tremendous amount going on there. You're one of the few guests who, as I mentioned to in the introduction, that straddles both the entrepreneurial journey, but also is exposed to the private capital sector. So we're definitely going to double click on that a little bit. But first of all, thanks very much for taking the time out to come and join us here on the podcast.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Ferdinand. It was great to see you in New York a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll dive in here, Pat. As the title of the podcast suggests, we're keen to get to know a little bit more about the person. And so you can go back as far as you like. You could go back to childhood, anything that influenced you, why you are where you are today, your entrepreneurial drive, where that came from. But just to kind of bring people up to speed on who is Pat Kinsel and how did you get to the point that you're at today?
Sure. Well, I'm a Scorpio, if that's important to people out there. But I was actually born and raised in San Francisco, California, and in the on the peninsula. I lived on the Stanford campus for a period of time as a kid. So I, through the 80s, the 90s, and the aughts, was just very exposed to, entrepreneurship, technology. It's something I've always thought I wanted to do. As a kid, I said I wanted to be a venture capitalist. At some point along the history of my life, you had to have a JD MBA to do
Right.
that, and I do not. So I gave that dream
Yeah.
up. But I've always known what I wanted to do, and frankly, I'm doing exactly what I wanted with my life. So I'm happy to be here to talk with
Yeah,
folks.
that's great. Well, certainly the West Coast, if you're going to be anywhere and be influenced by it, the Valley is the place to pick up those, let's say, those early childhood drivers. And so you live on the East Coast now. What's your career been to date? How did you get to the point that you're at now? Can you give us just a précis history of that?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a lot of happy accidents. I'm a big believer in, the classic expression, be strong on the vision, but weak on the details. And so I came to the East Coast for boarding school.
Right.
I came and went to a school called Andover, and then I went to BU. And I actually didn't finish at BU. I stopped out of school and went and got a job basically as an in an IT role at a financial services firm.
Right.
I don't know why I did that. I was kind of bored with class. I thought it'd be a part-time thing, but I loved it, and I was quite successful. So I of course thought I should start a company. So I started my first business. It was called Existory, which ultimately did not succeed. And then I worked a lot with that company using APIs for social media.
Yep.
And Microsoft was hiring for this team to really focus on innovation related to social web. So I applied for the job, and despite not having finished college, because I had that experience, I was able to get the job.
All right.
Built some really cool stuff at Microsoft. I launched a social search engine. I did a huge partnership with Facebook. I was 24 or 25 years old and built something that Zuckerberg announced on stage at their annual conference,
Right.
and had all this experience, corp dev and negotiating the partnership with Facebook, and then left and started a search business that I sold to Twitter, and then went to Polaris, the venture capital firm, where the thing I did, which I'm most known for, is I led all the rounds of investment at a company called Drizzly.
Right.
And then a notary screwed up a document, and I thought someone's got to go solve this problem, and so here I am today. So, I just have sort of gone from one thing to the next, letting sort of my excitement, take me where we're going to
Yeah.
go.
Well, I was fascinated to there's certainly some common threads as you moved through those companies and that progression that at least was apparent to me as I read your background. Just going back to that first, I won't call it failure because it's kind of you either win or you learn, right? To put a positive spin on it, and every success story is I mean typically littered with some either significant failure or a series of failures, which is how you learn. Existry, as I understood it, was kind of it was that history of the individual and kind of connecting these points. Was it a kind of social connection,
Yeah.
gradual building up of somebody's experience?
Yeah, so maybe just to root my own life in sort of
Yep.
context. So I, went to Andover. Zuckerberg went to Exeter. He's 1 year ahead of
Hmm.
me. I was in college when Facebook came out. So I was that age. I was where everything was about social media. And so really, my observation was we're all sharing all of this content, and it's kind of going nowhere and is
Yep.
useless. And so, what if you could actually tie it together and create a shared
Hmm.
history? That was the point of that this name Existiry,
Yep.
right? So, places, events, people, all the content that's being shared. And we built it, without really any experience. I went out and hired a team, and we got the thing built. And then, Facebook changed their APIs. They went from an iframe model to, a pure API model. And I would have had to have rebuilt the whole thing. And there was sort of an acknowledgement that the thing was cool, but not
Yeah.
enough. And I got some guidance, which was really that, building software is a craft and a profession. And I should really learn how to go do that. And so that's when I applied to Microsoft.
Right.
And I had a really fantastic experience there. I mean, I went through a lot of formal training as a product manager. And I recommend a lot of people go get a real job
Yeah.
and learn.
It is. It's yeah. It's great to be able to learn. The ropes and understand what structure looks like and some of the foundational experiences that you can, I won't say you can only get in large companies, but certainly there's a real learning curve there that you can take advantage of in working for some of these larger companies. And Microsoft, that's a
Yeah.
great training ground for sure.
Yeah, even if not a larger company, just a company that clearly knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
And how do teams work together? How do you engage with customers?
Yeah.
I was very fortunate at Microsoft because typically you're in very large teams, and I was on this very small team, but that had this big mandate. And so I, at a very young age, got to really run projects with the full resources of Microsoft. So the legal team, the corporate development team, the marketing team, and so very early on got some fantastic
Yeah.
exposure. And I'm really thankful for that time there.
Yeah. And a move then back from Microsoft into Spindle, this entrepreneurial journey starting again. What what uh, what what was it that made that move make sense to you?
Yeah, I mean, so I was at Microsoft, and I was on a team focused on intrapreneurship. So we were trying to incubate new products and new concepts inside the company. And it was this model where you would pitch, anyone could pitch something to almost like an investment
Right.
committee. You'd have a testable hypothesis. You'd have to identify KPIs. And then if you could address those, you'd come back and you'd ask for more resources. So I was in this sort of mode of pitching ideas and building things. And we built this social search engine. Then we built this thing, docs.com, which was a collaboration with Facebook, really to bring Office online into Facebook. Now you'll notice no one has that
Yeah.
today, right? Despite the fact that we built it and Mark Zuckerberg got on stage and announced it
Right.
in his keynote at his annual conference.
Yeah.
So
I remember that time
so the
he was
pol
super keen to get into the kind of enterprise space, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not why it died. It died because of politics within Microsoft.
Right.
So I was a very young employee. I had built this big project. I was, really congratulated for it. The head of office, the head of all these divisions saying this is this huge deal, this major business for us that's been tapped now into this huge community. This was as Microsoft was just beginning its pivot to a subscription business within Office.
Right.
And then for politics, it got killed. So I was pretty disheartened and just thinking to myself, Jesus, I just did exactly what I was asked to do. We got this deal done. We built this thing. It was announced. And yet, for just these dumb reasons, it's going to get killed. So with the people I had done the first project with, the search project, we said, look, we think we have a different idea, and we left and we started that business. And we did that for about 3 or 4 years, and we built a fantastic
Yeah.
product. Well, actually, we built a fantastic technology. And if you go back to that era and talk to people, they would say that we built the best social search engine in the market. And really, the observation there was, everyone was trying to surface links. We wanted to surface actual social content. And so, drawing on some of the experience from Existory and then our time at Microsoft, we built this great search engine, which we sold to Twitter
Right.
ultimately, and I think in 2013,
Right.
maybe.
Yeah.
Feels like ancient
Yeah.
history.
That's 11 years ago. Yeah, that's
I know.
crazy, isn't it? But it doesn't seem, I mean, certainly, and we'll come back. I had been a colleague of mine who is now actually heads up music at Amazon, Steve Boom. I remember talking about um, some exposure that he had to Foursquare at the time, and it was, and I can see the parallels, except it looks like what you guys have done or had done at that time was far more kind of organic rather than it being dependent on registering and create your store and it seemed like
Yeah. I mean, yeah, really. I mean, Foursquare was a great
Mhm.
product. I was a big fan of Foursquare. What we did was quite
Mhm.
different. And so for us, if you go back to the beginnings of search when Yahoo was ultimately beaten by
Yep.
Google, what Yahoo did, TF-IDF, right? So basically, the number of keywords that were in content. So if something said Red Sox a lot, it would rank first. And Google came along and they said, no, we need a model. And so they built a model. And it doesn't really matter what it was, but it was
Yep.
better, right? And it was a way so people couldn't cheat. They couldn't just write Red Sox 100 times. So we basically said, there's all this great content that people are sharing. Restaurants are sharing, sports teams are sharing, athletes, politicians, right? Local stores. And if we could just apply a model to that, we can surface it. And so we built all these models, we built this ingestion pipeline. But to give you some examples, like, you could say that you wanted like dollar drafts,
Hmm.
and you could just turn that on and have it on your phone. You could walk through town, and if you walked past a restaurant or bar that 3 days ago posted on Thursday at 4 o'clock, we're going to have dollar
Yeah.
drafts. If it was Thursday at 3:55, you'd get an alert showing you that content from several days
Yep.
prior. It was really cool. Ultimately, though, the problem was we built the technology and we didn't have enough money to build an app. And it was and we were some geeks, right? And it was our vision that we would license this and that we would, we built a model for sports, we built a model for politics, and then we were out trying to license those and monetize the technology. And ultimately, someone said they wanted to buy it, and so we sold it.
Yeah.
It was great. It was a good outcome.
Great. Great. And as part of that process, you got exposed to the inefficiencies of the notarization service. Is that correct?
Yeah, not quite then. So then I was gonna go. So I sold the company to Twitter, and I actually didn't go join Twitter. I was going
Right.
to, and I was pretty tired, but more, my experience from Existory, tiny tiny little company, to Microsoft, huge company, to Spindle, tiny tiny little
Hmm.
company, was no matter where you are, it's really hard to build
Yeah.
something. It's hard to do it for yourself. It's hard to do it for a big company. And I was looking at Twitter, and I was just like, I don't know that I can go back in to another big company and do this. And I said, look, I think I want to bet on myself. So I actually didn't go. And Polaris, who is our investor, said that I could go and hang a shingle with them. So they said, why don't you come in as an entrepreneur in residence? So I joined Polaris, really not aspiring to be an investor. And then I found a couple deals, and I said, hey, look, I think you should look at this. And they said, well, why don't you do it? So I made two investments, one in a company called Lob, and then in Drizzly.
Yeah.
And then I became a partner, like it was so sort of happenstance. And then a couple years later, Twitter was going public, and when Twitter was going public, I needed a notarized form. So I went to the UPS store, I got the thing notarized. The guy screwed it up, and I thought to myself, someone's going to fix
Yeah.
this. So that is when I started notarize. I started it out of the firm.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I was actually, I'm a former client of Lob. In private equity, actually, we used to use them for the issuance of PPMs and various other documents.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Lob's a great company. They're still doing really
Yeah,
well.
really neat
So
integration. It was pretty easy to get up and running. So,
yeah, it's funny for folks who, so Lob is a print and mail automation company. So it's an API that sits on tops of local
mhm,
printers. And if you're an advertiser, it allows you to do things like send a completely customized, highly targeted piece of mail from a local print center so it gets there more quickly, and then track it so you can put it into an automated, program. And then I invested in Drizzly, which was alcohol delivery,
right,
and then Notarize. What's interesting in my mind, they're all the exact same business.
right,
So it's mail, alcohol, and
right.
notaries. But really what it is it's technology on top of a local asset. So a print center, the liquor retailer, or
Yeah,
notaries. And it really creates efficiency in those markets and it allows people to automate and digitize something on top of that network. So in my mind, they're the same business despite being very
it
different.
is. It's a good way of thinking about it. And so that time at Polaris, what did you take away from that? You obviously, you were exposed. You saw the business opportunity. You left. What were the things that you took away from that perhaps you didn't have in your entrepreneurial journey to date?
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's three things that I primarily took away. First off, I enjoyed it a lot. And, I had some great mentors there. Dave Barrett was the managing partner, who's someone who's really supported me in my career. But for me, it's easy in the entrepreneur's seat to say that being a VC is easy. That's also a hard job.
Yeah.
And what really struck me being a venture capitalist is everyone thinks the job is about picking, and that is not the job in my opinion. It may be at the seed stage where you're going to make 100 investments and let whatever happen, but if you want to be a real Series A, Series B, Series C investor, it's about what happens after the
Hmm.
fact. And there's a moment where you've got 10, 20, $50 million invested in companies and they're run by young people without a lot of experience and you realize
Yeah.
shit. Like I have to bring back not just the
Yeah.
50, but a multiple of
Hmm.
that, right? And so I think empathy on both sides is important. And that's been really instructive. Two, I would say that I don't think entrepreneurs fully appreciate that the venture model truly is built on companies failing.
Hmm.
And when you sit in a partner meeting at a venture firm and you talk about the fact that so and so is not doing well, at least in my experience, it's not an emotional discussion, right? There's a portfolio of assets, some are performing well, some are not performing well. And what's the takeaway from that as an entrepreneur is you should really go for it. It's not about managing this downside risk. It's about really taking a swing and trying to do something
Hmm.
fantastic. And not everyone should raise venture capital, just to be
Yeah.
clear. But
Yeah.
so that's pretty freeing. And a VC would rather have you fail fast and learn and come back and say, here's the next thing that we're going to do,
Yeah.
than have you linger out as a zombie company, forever. Not just resources, but intellectual capital,
Yeah.
right? And that's something I've really thought a lot about. And the other thing is that I ultimately maybe I was a bad and maybe I would have been a bad investor had I stayed there for a long time. But I think founders don't fully appreciate how much someone's personal interest matters when they're trying to raise money. And the advice that people give is that you should try to find someone who understands your space and blah 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 and pitch to the right partner. But if you are a investor who's trying to decide if you want to be involved in something for 5, 10, 15 years, if you're not interested in it, you're not going to do
Yeah.
it, right? And that's where I think magic happens is when you, as a founder, can find someone who really cares about the space and gets it and wants to really work with you for a decade. Is when good things happen. So I really appreciated it. And the other thing I would say is I learned how to negotiate a term sheet on both sides,
Yeah.
which that's a valuable
For
skill.
sure.
So.
Yeah. I mean, my journey is similar to the extent that I had before I got into private equity. Um, I'd been through and grown and sold a company, and but my experience was on one side of the fence, right? And I think it's super valuable to be on the other side of the fence to understand, well, what's the, what conversations are you having as part of the investment committee? What's your thesis for investment? What does a good outcome look like? But then also that, as you say, it's kind of we use the expression in the company on the sales side of the business. You've got to get to know quickly.
Yeah,
Figure out what you should be working on, right? And there is an element of that in the kind of the parallel of venture, for example, to understand where the successes are and inevitably where the failures are. But it really, the proximity that you get when you're the other side of the table to the decision-making process is just incredibly valuable, in my experience at least, because I hadn't experienced it before. But when you're going out there to raise, as you have, multiple rounds of capital, and you understand what that journey looks like, presumably that's that, and perhaps your choice of investors when you decided to raise for Notarize. How
for
did
sure.
that play out for you?
Yeah, I mean, a couple things. I think that another lesson that I've drawn from sort of the experience at Spindle and then Polaris and now Notarize, which we now call Proof.
Yeah,
But when I was raising money for Spindle, my pitch was that search is the most profitable business model that's ever been invented, and the only other corpus of sufficient size is the social corpus. And I'm going to build this business that's going to be worth billions of dollars. And I was trying to raise $1 million.
right,
And someone said to me, they said, "Why do you sound so goddamn sheepish? Like, if you think it's such a big opportunity, you shouldn't be apologizing. You should be like saying you're lucky to invest in this business,
right,
right?" And so, one, I think that a lot of founders don't raise enough money and they don't actually have a plan that's viable. And what they think is, what is the smallest amount of money that I can ask for to get what I need versus saying, what is the actual plan that I could be successful with? So when I raised money for Notarize, I thought it might cost $700,000 to build the product, but I raised $2.5 million because I specifically budgeted money for go to market, for launch. We made a very expensive video, which I think was very
yeah,
successful. I had this whole plan. So when I was raising capital, it wasn't, I think I'm going to build this product. It was, I'm going to actually launch this thing. And what we're going to learn is there people actually going to notarize documents on the internet?
right,
And I think my time at Microsoft around these testable, you know, hypotheses and KPIs is the right way to run a
yeah,
business or to run a startup, which is, look, I'm trying to get there, and I've thought about this in milestones. My first milestone at Notarize was, can I build a product that complies with the law, and will consumers do it? The second milestone was, will regulators accept it? Can I get businesses to adopt? Can I get people to sign committed contracts, right? And if you think about it in these phases, it really makes fundraising a lot easier because people can assess: do we believe in your capacity to get there? Is the company in a fundamentally different position if you've succeeded? And it aligns the team around these milestones. So that's how I've run, the
yeah,
company. The milestone I'm in today is, can I really build the organization to scale,
right.
right? Which is a lot of fun. It's a whole new challenge for
And
me.
just to contextualize for listeners, what stage are you at in terms of series and stage in your growth?
Yeah, I've raised about $260 million for Proof. So a lot of money.
Yeah,
And look, we have many of the Fortune 100 customers on our platform, and we're doing really well. But we had some tough times. I mean, I've shared this before, but like in 2019, I ran out of money 5 times. We were a business that was spending millions of dollars and had spent tens of millions of dollars on regulatory affairs and lobbying without a lot of commercial traction.
right.
So we've had some really tough times, but we've got through it. So
Yeah. I mean, that's incredible. First of all, and congrats. But I say that knowing that there's a counter to that, which is now you've got some big commitments to make or to meet,
yeah,
which I think it's always. I know it's cliche, but the work really does start when you raise that kind of capital.
Yes, tell me
But
about it.
that's great. And just to kind of put into context for, again, for our listeners, just as you mentioned, you've rebranded Notarize as Proof, or is it more accurate to say Notarize is kind of now a Proof property?
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
product of the
Okay.
platform.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so just tee up the problem that you're solving for people here, and
Yeah.
where you.
Yeah, maybe just the history is
Yeah.
instructive. So, I mentioned when Twitter went public, I needed a notarized
Hmm.
document. So I did what everyone does. I went to the UPS store. I got the thing notarized. I sent it off, and I got a call 2 weeks later saying, "Hey, the notary screwed this up. Drama, drama,
Right.
drama." So the initial company was, I never want to have to go through the drama of finding a notary again. I just want to do it on my phone.
Right.
And so what we basically built was telemedicine for notaries, right? So a video call, where you have to go through identity verification process. You sign a document on the screen, you get a PDF
Right.
document. And we launched that in February of 2016. It was very well received. I mentioned that we had a great video. It was in every publication, just such a crystal clear
Yeah.
concept, online notarization,
Hmm.
right? But it was consumer focused. Businesses started coming inbound almost immediately. So some of the largest banks, mortgage lenders, insurance companies contacted me within the first month. And they said, "Hey, if you can really do this, this is going to be a game changer for
Right.
us." So I quickly realized it was a business application. And some of these businesses process 9 million forms a year, 10 million forms a year. And it's critical to their business. It's a huge problem for them. So I was, okay, this is a business
Yeah.
tool. Now, at the same time, regulators had a heart attack. So we went out, we met with regulators. We've since passed about 45 state laws, changed all of these federal policies. That's been a whole journey.
Yeah.
But several years ago, what happened is customers started using our platform for fraud and security. And so transactions that did not need to be notarized, they were choosing to notarize them because they wanted to go through the strong identity verification, because they wanted this record that was a stronger record of what
Yeah.
happened. And so over time, we served more and more of these customers, and they started saying, "Can you remove the human? Can I get the security benefits,
Right.
the stronger records? Can you support this use case, that use case?"
Right.
And so over time, we served more and more of these just high trust transactions, and we realized that notarizations were really just one part of the platform. So we rebranded the platform to
Yeah.
Proof, and that is our business solution today. Notarize is still the consumer product. So if you go to notarize.com,
Yeah.
it solves that initial problem of never having to find a
Right.
notary. And the thing for people to understand is our service levels are extraordinary. So we answer almost 90% of all calls in less than 1 second.
Wow.
So it's truly, you could be anywhere in the world needing to sign anything, and within 1 second, we have a notary for
Yeah.
you. And that's transformational for business,
Hmm.
right? You're trying to open an account, you're trying to close a mortgage. That level of service has really transformed our customers' businesses.
That's great. And one of the things that struck me, Pat, you mentioned that video, and I look back and I saw that the spindle video, I saw the notarized video, and they are high production videos, and you can tell they're they're not inexpensive to make. Are you, is marketing a very strong part of your DNA, or because it's a bold move to invest significantly in that sort of thing in the early days.
Yeah, that's a great question. I am not a
Mm.
marketer. That said, though, part of the training that I got at Microsoft, which I think that most product managers are
Hmm.
lacking, is that your job is not just to build something, but to see it all the way through into your customers'
Right.
hands,
Yeah.
right? And as a product manager, it's your responsibility to work with sales, work with marketing, train them, identify initial customers, establish value proposition. Like, so I have a more, I think, expansive view of what a product manager is supposed to do.
Right.
And at Microsoft, again, I was a kind of, unlike being on a huge team, I really was in a small role getting to work with all these people. So I got a lot of exposure to how do you launch a product, right? What is the whiteboard behind you with the 400 things that you're going to
Right.
do, the cadence of blog posts and contacting press and FAQs and like
Yeah.
truly having your shit together,
Yeah.
right? And so when we launched, I did all of that, right? And because that was what I was trained to
Yeah.
do. The videos was different. That was a bet.
Right.
And it's funny. I made a video for Spindle with this guy, Adam Lysagor from Sandwich Video. He doesn't take everybody, but if you can convince him to take you on, he and his team are
Yeah.
extraordinary. And I contacted him for the notarized thing, and I was like, "Look, I'm starting another company. I'm thinking about making a video." And I talked to him, and he says, "Well, my prices have gone up,
Right.
and like a lot. I won't share his numbers, but a lot." And I
Yeah.
was like, "God damn
Yeah.
it!" And I told him what it was, and he called me back. He said, "You gotta let me do this. You gotta let me do this." And I was like,
Yeah.
I'm not paying this amount." And then without me hiring him, he wrote the whole script and he sent it to me.
Wow.
And he's like, "You gotta let me do
Yeah.
this." He's like, "I'm gonna nail it." And it was a fantastic
Yeah.
script. And it's really a lesson I have learned time and time and time again, which is when working with people in creative fields, if they really are passionate and there's a spark, let them do
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
right? And so I said, fine.
Yeah.
I paid way more
Yeah. No, it's a
than
great
I should
video. I
have.
mean, it's definitely
It's
memorable.
it's won all these
Yeah.
awards, and what was so awesome about it though is like from a branding perspective, I entered this horribly, I don't want to say boring, I love it, but like there's no technology in the notary market. Title insurance, like these are our customers, and I come out with this awesome video. We have this great brand, like our logo was created by the guy at who designed all the Facebook logos
Oh,
and things
wow.
like
Okay.
that. Did a seal for
Yeah.
Obama. We just nailed the brand and the launch and the video, and I think it just set the expectation that we were going to do things
Yeah.
differently and that we were going to be a great company. And I encourage people to think about when they enter the world, like what is people's reaction to how polished it is. I think it's important.
Yeah, yeah. No, it was great. It was notable, and the style. Actually, I think it is interesting. It's kind of I can see the similarities. It doesn't surprise me. It's from the same house.
Yeah.
But so your this move that you're making or that you have made, I think it's probably what 9 months ago that you rebranded, or rather you launched the Proof brand, should I say? Um, and it is an extraordinary time, when we think about just trust as a broader challenge for companies. And we find it. I mean, we operate in the private capital space. Trust is extremely important for lots of reasons. Financial services, generally speaking, is built on it. And yet there are these, huge emerging challenges. I read your piece on the challenges that come with AI and kind of deep fake and technologies that have the potential to circumvent many of these these processes that help build trust. When you look at that, perhaps looking a little bit further out, what trends are you seeing that are either exciting to you? They may be challenging, but exciting in terms of the business opportunity it represents and the value that you can bring. Um, what are those trends?
Yeah. I mean, first and foremost, like our core notarized business, I continue to be extremely
Mm,
excited about just because of the continued march towards
yeah,
digitization, right? So that's a trend that anyone out there should bet on. And I think especially in regulated markets, right? Like there are still greenfield opportunities. Like, we digitized the mortgage closing process and it went from paper to us.
right.
You know what I mean? So digitization, I think, is obviously a safe
Yeah,
bet. You mentioned AI. Of course, I'm excited by AI. It's transformational. It's groundbreaking. It's gonna, all of the positives. But I think that people don't fully appreciate how mental it is that I can copy your face and pretend to be you.
hmm,
Everything that we have built, in society related to trust and security is based on the notion that like you can prove who you
yeah,
are. If you think about all the security practices in the world, they presume it's all about phishing. It's all about me. I have to trick you to do
right,
something, right? Well, now people don't have to trick you; they can just pretend to be
right.
you. And they can not just pretend to be you, they could be pretend to be a million yous,
Hmm.
or they could pretend to be 1,000 different people. So if you're a financial services company, a mortgage lender, a county recorder who's responsible for property rights and ownership, like this is an existential threat. And so with proof, that's where we're very focused right now. And for us, we think that people need stronger identity verification, but really we think that you need to bind identity to the records that are produced. Had the chance to go to the White House a couple of weeks
Right.
ago. And the example I gave them is I said, look, think about someone's tax return. There's tons of tax fraud. People submit fraudulent tax returns claiming that they are due a refund to take money from the government, right?
Yep.
And they may say to the industry, look, you need to put people through identity verification. But ultimately, what's submitted is totally disassociated from what happened. So when you're the IRS and you get this document, you have no idea what happened. You have no idea if the person actually proved who they were. Think about financial services. You get a wire authorization, or you get a spousal consent, or a beneficiary designation, a power of attorney.
Yep.
Right? These are things that underlie hundreds of thousands of dollars of mortgage.
Yep.
Right? So we think that there's a much stronger level of security, people signing with their legal identity, and that's what we're focused on today.
Yep.
So it's crazy times.
Yeah. Well, but lots of opportunity for you guys.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
look, I love technology. I mean, I love the fact that companies get big and then they, forget how to operate, and then small guys come over and they take them over. I mean, it's the cycle of
Yeah.
life,
Yeah.
like people make all these investments in security, and then a technology comes along and it disrupts it, and there's more opportunity, right? So
Yeah.
that is what I love about the technology industry. It's so dynamic.
Yeah. No, it's great. I mean, one of the things that this social vein has kind of permeated your entire career, or at least up until this point. And I connected. I should say, we share similar investors, or an investor in Canopy Ventures, and I connected with my fellow founders when we took investment a couple of years ago, and so passively over the last couple of years, you'll pop up on my timeline, and I say, "Oh, Pat's at he's at the he's in Washington again, and he's helped pass this bill, and it's just been fascinating to see, and really admirable to see the the degree to which you're committed to the cause, and it comes across. And I'm saying this, I'm just reading it passively. We haven't
Yeah.
we haven't engaged that much. We met at a couple of events, etc. But it is really admirable to see, and to be able to have I would say it's almost the courage to tackle some of the challenges that come with regulatory change, which doesn't come easy. It's slow moving. It's glacial paced at best, but it's tremendous to see. I mean, if you look at the number of states right now that are capable of accepting the solution that you guys offer, what was it kind of day one, and what does it look like now?
Yeah, it's a great question. So you said courage. Lunacy might be the right word, but the when I started, it was so I get the document notarized. The guy screws it up. I think to myself, this is
Hmm.
stupid. I go on the internet. I read what everyone would normally
Hmm.
read, and it says it's not possible to do digitally. I think, damn,
Right.
right? I kept picking at it. I kept picking at it, and ultimately, what happened is I broke my leg, and I had a couple months on a couch with a lot of free time.
Right.
And Virginia had passed a law that allowed for video notarization, and it had all of this crazy requirements for identity verification and record retention. And actually, because of my time at Drizzly, they did driver's license verification, and so I had some experience with some of this stuff. And I sat on a couch for 2 months and I pieced it together. And then I thought to myself, still on the couch, well, nobody wants to be the king of Virginia
Right.
notarizations, right? This has got to be a national solution.
Yeah.
So I started reading, all the state, policies, and concluded you could do it today. You could do it, this is in 2012 or whatever
Right.
the year was. You could do it nationally. And for anyone who is a student of the internet, if you understand the sort of issues around sales tax and venue, or if you understand issues around driver's licenses and venue, if you do something in one state and it's an official record, it's accepted everywhere. So I designed this product and I did this analysis on a couch 10 years ago. I've since spent probably close to $100 million convincing other people of the research that I did on a
Yeah,
couch.
right.
But the way that played out is before we launched, I went down to Virginia and I said, look, we met with the Attorney General, the Secretary of State, Secretary of Commerce. And we said, look, we're about to launch this thing as a national service out of Virginia, and we want to be certain that you're on the same page.
Right.
And literally, they were like, we don't even know about this law.
Right.
What?
Yeah.
So we educate them, and they're like, yeah, we feel the same.
Right.
So we launched the
Yeah.
thing. And then since then, if you fast forward to today, it's 45 states have passed laws. We operate in all 50, though.
Right.
We've changed IRS, SEC, State Department, NHTSA, which is, auto, the GSCs, FHFA, Coast Guard, FAA.
Right.
And really the history of the company is that people would notarize forms and then send them off and they would get rejected. And then they'd email and say, what the hell? And I would start calling people,
Right.
So a guy sold a boat. Turns out all boat title transfers go to the Coast Guard.
Right.
Passport applications go to the State Department. So it's been a slog. The thing I would say though is that it's always been clear that the juice is worth the squeeze, because we've had the entire time, partners stepping forward to help us. First American Title, Lennar, Wells Fargo. I can go on and on, anywhere, the real estate company saying this is transformational. They've supported the company by investing. They've supported the company by showing up to testify in states. So that's how we've kept going, is because it's been clear that on the other side, that it's transformational. People want to use the product.
Yeah.
Last thing I would say is it's why today we are such an efficient business in terms of our sales and go to market. There's some huge companies in the 401k and retirement planning space. We spent 3 years changing IRS policy. During that time, we collaborated with all them. We said, we're going to go do this. Do you have opinions on the policy?
Right.
We had weekly calls. We went down to DC and had meetings together, right? So then we're successful. We changed the policy. Like, who do you think they're going to sign up
Right.
with,
Right.
right? And so it makes us the trusted provider in the space.
Yeah. Yeah, incredible. I mean, it's great to see, and congrats on the success there that you're having with that. Just a handful of states left, but you can operate in all right now. It,
Yeah, we just got California, which was a big
right.
one, and we have a federal bill which we feel good about.
Yeah.
But it's frankly fun. Like I think so many entrepreneurs, especially in the technology industry, don't leave the quote unquote basement. Like they don't get out. I've been to more than 40 states. I've testified in nearly as many. We have got customers all across the country, and it's really fun to serve something like the title industry. They appreciate good software and technology.
Yeah.
It's actually fun to work with the state legislatures. Most of them, they can be frustratingly slow, but they're surprisingly well intended, and it's been a wonderful experience.
Yeah. Well, it would be remiss of me not to mention for our target audience, which is the private capital space, venture capital, the PE space, the commercial real estate space. If they want to learn more about your capabilities, where should they go?
Well, if you need something notarized,
Yeah.
you can download the app Notarize or go to notarize.com. Online 24/7, 365 in less than a second.
Great.
But our new product is proof.com.
Right.
And really, it's the ability to sign anything with your identity. And we're really excited about that new product.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, great timing. I mean, you create your own luck, right, ultimately, but definitely a need for that. And it is fascinating. The market will sometimes, well, more often than not, it'll tell you where you need to be question is, can you move there? Can you get there quickly enough? So it is fascinating to hear that some of the use cases, you might not necessarily have even planned for. So it's not the notary service, but it's everything wrapped around that's of interest. And so to be able to see that emerge. Just in closing, Pat, when I saw proof.com, I'm like, how did he get that URL? How is that domain not, like, is there anything you can share about the history of that?
Sure. Yeah.
Because it's a great name.
First, I love
Yeah,
domains. Notarize is a good story too. When I started the company, I went onto the App
right.
Store and I just registered Notarize. No one had even claimed it. And it just goes to show this is a space that people weren't
Yeah,
thinking about, right? And then the Notarized domain, I got lucky. I reached out, and it was actually a private equity firm had bought a huge portfolio of domains and then tasked a group with selling
right.
them. So that one was easy.
'Cause
Proof was owned by
right,
someone, and I think he's fine with me sharing the story. He's a really good
right,
guy, and he had plans for it. It was going to be a crypto project.
right.
He had started something else in the crypto space that was very
As in proof of
successful.
stake or proof of work or something like that, or yeah,
Yeah, and I reached out to him and I just said, "Look, if you ever are willing to part with this, I'm
right,
interested." And we got to know each other. And he said, "Look, he knew the company
right.
Notarize, and he basically said, "Look, if I'm going to sell this thing, I want someone to do something with it." And we talked a lot about it, and he's very aligned with the vision. And he said, "Look, like this is
Yeah,
important," and he had moved on from his project, so I paid him a lot of money for
yeah.
it.
Always
Don't
helps.
get me wrong, but my strategy to buying domains is really pretty simple, which is everyone tries to be
Yeah,
cute and they try to pretend that they don't have
yeah,
resources. I do the exact opposite. I reach out and say, "I can afford to buy this
yeah,
from you, and let's have a conversation." And I found so many times, like I mentioned earlier, that our notarized logo was designed by the person who created the Facebook logo. His name is Ben
right.
Berry. He also created the OpenAI logo. He's an extraordinary
Yeah,
designer. I reached out to him, 10 years ago, however long, and he had done these seals for Obama.
right,
And I said, "Hey, I want you. Can you help me with these seals?" And he gave me this price quote that was like
right.
bananas. And I was like, "Oh man, I can't afford that. It's a bummer because you did this seal for Obama, and I'm starting this notary company."
Yeah,
And he wrote back and he said, "I love
right,
seals." And he gave me this huge
right.
discount. And I said, "Look, I don't have a time constraint. We're just starting on this
Yeah,
thing, give or take a
right.
year. If you have time to work on this thing." And he designed this awesome logo and this whole branding scheme. The video guy was the
Yeah,
same. Buying the proof domain ultimately was because I got the guy to care. So that's really, I think, been a key, is like finding really creative
yeah,
people, giving them license to do what they want to do. Um, anyway,
yeah. Well, it's um, testimony to you and to the company that you're building, and the team of people I'm sure that work with you, that it comes across even today. We've met a couple of times, but I'm wishing you nothing but success, just based on my
well, I appreciate that.
observation of the work.
Well, the team
Yes,
too. There's a lot of us
absolutely.
that have worked our ass off, but
But
yeah.
it's so obvious the work that you're putting into it, and the thoughtfulness. I think that the Proof brand is just incredible, and great timing, etc. Great domain. Um, but it is, I think it's contagious, and I think it comes across in everything you guys do, which I mean is saying something. So for what it's worth, I just want to share that with you, which is why I was so keen to get you on the podcast.
I appreciate that.
Well, look, just to wrap up, if people want to connect with you, Pat, obviously they can go to proof.com, they can go to notarize.com, depending on their needs. Personally, are you active on social channels?
Yeah, LinkedIn, Twitter. I mean, I'm in enterprise sales, so I'm very active on
You are
LinkedIn.
available.
So
Great.
yes.
Well, we'll put your contact details in the show notes for anybody who wants to connect with you. But for today, Pat, I really appreciate taking the time out. It's been great to learn more about your journey. And we'll be watching from the sidelines, wishing you nothing but success with Proof and Notarize and whatever comes next. But thanks very much for joining us on the podcast today.
I appreciate it, and best of luck to you as
Thanks,
well.
Pat.